Do you want to know how to take your business idea and actually get started in a business of your own? Do you want to be able to attract the customers and clients who will value what you do and be happy to pay you? Are you keen to get that pricing strategy right? How do you plan to fund the startup? I know there's a ton of questions. Listen in, because the So You Want to Start a Business podcast has been made just for you. In this podcast, we are here to tell terrific business stories to help answer all your questions. I am your host, Ingrid Thompson, and I have been running my own business, Healthy Numbers, for almost 20 years. And over that time, I have worked with literally hundreds of people to help them create and start and grow their own business, successful and thriving businesses. In this podcast, I speak with inspirational entrepreneurs and business owners about what it takes to get a business off the ground, to get started in business, and to continue to be successful. Welcome back to episode number 126 with Teneshia Jackson Warner. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. I asked Teneshia about her exit plan, and here is what she had to say.
I will say this, a few years back, we started to work with an advisory company that was supporting us to scale the business. And more so than ever before, we kind of had our eye on the exit plan, and we had our eye on scale. And now that we're starting 2020, I actually just gave a speech to my staff where I said, you know what? Let's slow this thing down and let's get back to our core. I don't want to so focus on more, scale, that the very thing that built us is somehow being watered down. Let's not lose the magic in this journey to scale, become bigger, better, faster. So the three words that I'm saying to my company this year is rebuild, reset, and recalibrate. And that's all around this initiative to make sure that we're slowing down and we're paying attention to the core.
I just love this. It is so easy to get caught in the idea and the efforts of scale and growth. Teneshia has built a multi-million-dollar business, completely bootstrapped, and has an office right there in New York City. You'll hear the sirens and the street sounds of New York in the background during this interview. It is a terrific interview as Teneshia shares her story about leaving the corporate world and starting her own business that now, at the time of recording, has 15 employees. I truly think you're going to enjoy this interview conversation, as it is another wonderful business startup story, and it shows how Teneshia got started, and it's a very different story to any others we've had on this podcast. She certainly is unique. She is smart and sincere, and when she talks about the characteristics that have contributed to making her a success in business, she talks about serving first and being humbly confident, combined with a tenacious spirit. As always, there is no advertising on this podcast apart from me, my book, and my guest, who, in fact, Teneshia has a book. This episode is brought to you by my book and her book. My book is So You Want to Start a Business, that is the same as the podcast. Head over to wherever you buy your books online for Kindle or the physical book. If you prefer to listen, there's some episodes recorded, the first 5 chapters between episodes 70 and 90. I want to thank everyone for their reviews on iTunes. We know that these reviews continuously keep our popularity rankings in iTunes and more. I truly appreciate it. So if you're loving these conversations, please head over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a comment and a 5-star review. Thanks, that'll be great. Anyway, enough from me. Let's listen to what Teneshia has to say about starting and running her own business and so much more. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and here we are today with Teneshia Jackson Warner. Hello, Teneshia. Welcome.
Hello. How are you, Ingrid?
Fantastic, and I hope you are the same. I think you are.
I am. I'm really excited to speak with you and your audience today.
I know, and you have such a story to tell. So, first question, where are you in the world right now?
I am in New York City. At 35th Street and 7th Avenue in Manhattan.
Oh my gosh, I adore New York City. I have been many times, and I know exactly where you're talking about, that 35 and 7th. Oh, how fabulous. Teneshia, tell us, what is your business?
So my business, the name of the business is EGAMI Group, and it is an integrated marketing and communications firm based in New York. Our niche is we specialize in connecting corporate brands with multicultural audiences. So a multicultural marketing firm.
I love it. I love it. And I have to say, I love the way you say niche because we say niche and I love niche. I think it's such, yeah. So and this is a beautiful niche for you to be working in. So tell us, when did you start this business?
So I originally started in 2003, believe it or not. When I left my corporate job, I ended up creating EGAMI Group, although I did not really know what the business was going to become. Later, I reincorporated again once I had more clarity in 2007. So the year that we celebrate in terms of the founding of the firm, we actually celebrate 2007 because that's when we incorporated as an agency.
Yeah, that's so that couple of years in between was sort of finding your feet. Tanisha, I have to say, I loved when you sent through some information and it said you left the corporate world with a box and a dream. And it's such a beautiful way to describe how you were. So why did you do that? Like, why did you leave the corporate world with a box and a dream? And why did you start this business?
Well, after college, I landed an opportunity with IBM Global Services. I was a project manager at IBM, and one of my major accounts, was Best Buy. So for my family, when I landed this job at IBM, I really thought, I've made it. And I was climbing the corporate ladder, and I was probably about the third year in, I knew I had a problem. And the problem was I did not like my job. And so at the time I thought, okay, I need to do something about the fact that I'm not fulfilled at work. And I did a meeting with my manager and I said, what can I do to make more money? And she said, well, listen, if you want to be considered for a raise, you've really reached the highest point of your pay bracket. You would have to go back to school and work on your master's. So I went back to school to work on my master's. And it was during that particular program that a professor challenged all of his students to write a paper and examine what was the major driving factors behind big choices in your life. And I really took the assignment serious. I did a lot of soul searching. And at the end of that assignment, I had a big aha. And that aha was I was allowing earning potential to be the motivating factor of my major decisions. Going a bit deeper, my mom was a single mom. My mom and my father, they weren't together, although I had a relationship with both of them. But I did grow up in the home of a single parent mom. And inside of that, there was quite a bit of financial struggles. So I really made the decision that, you know what, I don't want to struggle anymore. And so I allow money and earning potential to be in the driver's seat of all of my major decisions. And it was writing this particular paper that I had the aha. And it was that point that I said, I'm curious to see what would life look like if I explored it through the lens of passion and purpose versus earning potential only.
Wow, isn't that a fantastic story? So, how random that something like that would actually be such a pivotal moment in your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that led you to make the choice to get started in your business. So, what did you want the business to give you? What was that business going to give you? Passion and purpose, or was there more to it than that?
Well, when I originally started, and I'm even going to say before starting the business, when I originally started on this journey of purpose and passion seeking, at the time, I literally wrote down everything that I felt was a part of my purpose, things that I felt I was really good with, skill sets that I felt were some of my strongest. I remember drawing the stick figure and I wrote down like project management. I wrote creativity. I wrote a love of pop culture. I wrote down that I wanted to do something in the community. And it wasn't clear. I literally started by really doing an examination from the inside out and thinking about what are those skill sets and gifts that I believed I could uniquely bring to the world. Once I got clear about that, I then said, I want to find opportunities where I can volunteer these skill sets. And many of those things were in fields that were not related to technology at all. I volunteered on a movie set in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I ended up volunteering at Rush Communications, which was a leading entertainment and media company here in New York. And it was through volunteering that I started to sort of find my way. One, I found areas that, or let's say this, I found categories of business where I could apply my skill set. And I actually later would find an opportunity for me to start the business. So after working at Rush Communications, volunteering for months, there was an opportunity from the founder. So he said, hey, listen, I want to hire you. And I said, you know what? You should actually hire my company. He came back and said, I didn't realize you had a company. And the inside joke that I always tell to crowds is, I didn't realize I had a company either. So he went away to Europe, and while the chairman of this particular company was away, I incorporated my company and I had my first client. So I actually, when I started the company, I didn't have a clear mission, purpose, service offering, but I did have a client that wanted to hire me based on the skills that I was doing volunteering at the organization. So nothing traditional about the way I started the company, no business plan. I had a client and I made it work.
You certainly did. That's a fantastic story, Teneshia. You didn't know you had a company either. So my next question is, when did you feel like the business was real? Was that the moment the business felt real, or is there somewhere else in the future from there where you just said to yourself, man, now I truly have a business?
I would probably say in the early years when I had one client, and that was Rush Communications, I think, similar to all business owners, you always remember that first check that you ever get. I can remember staring at the check. I couldn't believe that it was written out to EGAMI Consulting Group. I think the amount was $5,000. And so that was probably my first butterflies in my stomach. Oh my God, it's real. So when I received a check with the company name written out on it, that was, my first moment. But as time would go on, I think my second moment of whoa, this is a real company was when we started to take on corporate clients. And one of those corporate clients was Johnson's, and this is a US-based company, and they are the leading product providers in US high school, selling apparel, selling jewelry, basically celebratory jewelry and clothing for students when they graduate, like class rings. I'm not sure if you have that in Australia or not, but it's a thing here in America. When you graduate, you get a piece of jewelry that says, I'm a part of, class of 2019. And so when I landed that major US-based corporation as a client, and when that corporation wrote our company a check, that was the next moment of this is a real company. There's a major corporation writing our company a check. So that was the second moment.
That's pretty fantastic. And because half of the audience, about half our listening audience is in the US, so they will be able to relate very much to that business that you're referring to there. Jackson's, did you say?
Johnston's. Jostens. And if for the half that's based in the United States, just look at your class ring. I'm 90% positive you probably purchased your class ring from Johnston's.
That's fantastic. It's a lovely custom, actually. It does sound really good. So you had this business, well, because as you said, you didn't really have a traditional background, but how did you know that customers wanted this niche that you've come to? How did you know that there was a need for you to provide this particular service to customers? What was it that was going on in the market that gave you that idea?
Well, again, I'm going to kind of speak through the lens of here, US based, right? So the demographic makeup of audiences in the United States can be classified into different categories based on race. It can be based on gender, really the way that audiences or consumers identify themselves. So, in particular, in terms of some of the races that are make up the U.S. population, you have general market, and that's primarily white, Caucasian. You have African Americans or blacks, Hispanics, Asian. Women is sort of a segment that they also identify based on gender, LGBTQ. Um, and these are identifiers that audiences within the US will sort of identify themselves, whether they're taking a survey like the census or just how they identify in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in reaching different audiences, there are cultural nuances that matter to the different segments here in the United States. And the way you speak to one audience may look very different than way you speak to another audience. So from a landscape perspective, minorities within United States were on a track to become the majority. And each year, the year changes. I can remember when I first started out, it was the year of 2050, minorities would become the majority. And from this time, each year it's going up. And by 2030, the majority will be minorities. And so
Wow.
companies here in the United States, if they would like to remain relevant, if they want to find markets to grow their business, one of those markets can be by recruiting new users, new consumers of different demographic backgrounds. So for companies, they needed to understand, how do I become culturally relevant? How do I connect in culturally relevant ways? How do I connect my brand so that it's speaking to different audiences in ways that matter to that particular audience? And so for us, and I'm going to say it the way you say it, the niche was around, what if we could position ourselves to sort of be a conduit for these companies to understand diverse audience and understand how to become culturally competent to speak to these audiences.
Yeah.
And that's the premise that we built our business on. So the business case was there, just looking at the population of the United States and looking at how rapidly the audiences were changing here in the United States. So that really set the stage for the business case.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? We've just had go live in Australia a wonderful ad for advertising Australia to the predominantly white, middle class, middle aged UK audience to come visit Australia. And but it's so obvious that that is the absolute demographic of the ad. When we show it here, there's that sense of it being a little bit offensive because it leaves out all these different groups of people that might otherwise be an audience. But I think the thing that's important to remember is when that ad was made is that it was actually for a particular demographic, just exactly like you're saying, is that, that when we think about who is the audience, what is the message that they are going to hear most clearly? And, we've become a bit like you. We don't have quite so much of a race demographic, but we certainly have women, LGBT, those, that whole demographic there, because we have a very strong population in Australia that's, of difference from that point of view, but not so much from a race point of view. We still are quite white Anglo. We do certainly have a lot of immigrants, but I don't really think our advertising speaks to that in the way that it really does. When you go to America, when you see an American ad, you can
Mhm.
really see that. In fact, if we're watching something, we can tell it's an American ad as opposed to being an Australian ad. And I'm thinking particularly visual ads, that sort of television movement ads. It's a wonderful business that you've created, and such a strong niche, as you say, to be able to provide that to businesses that might otherwise not even consider or think about the fact that their reach needs to be segmented so that everybody can hear the message. Viability. So can I just ask you, how many's in your team right now? How many do you have?
So right now we are probably between 12 and 15 employees.
Wow. So, you've grown from yourself starting it out to 12. Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So how do you fund the early days of a business, and how do you fund expansion? Where does that money come from?
Well, we're 12 years in, and what I'm going to tell you we did in the beginning, we're actually still doing it now. And so essentially, we have definitely been bootstrapped. We've grown sort of from the inside out, where we will perform services and then collect the money, and the profits that our firm will make, we reinvest the profits back into the business.
Yeah.
And we've done that year over year over year, where we are sort of funding our own expansion.
Fantastic.
We're still 100% founder owned. We haven't raised a round of capital. I think there's pros and cons to growing in this way that I've described. One pro is I feel that you become very disciplined over your dollars and your profit, and you know how to make a dollar sort of stretch, and you know the importance to reinvest back into yourself. I do believe, though, growth in the way that EGAMI Group has grown, which is pretty much self-funded, you grow at a slower rate.
Yeah.
Versus if we would go out and raise a round of capital, I think we could potentially grow at a faster rate. So we are in the first stages now of really seriously thinking about doing a round of investment capital.
Yeah, that's a big decision, as you said back then when you did that paper about how do we make major choices. It's like really lining up what are the pros and cons of heading down whichever path you choose to head down. So just on that then, where would you see this going? Have you thought about an exit strategy? We consider that sort of begin with the end in mind. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about succession?
Well, I'll tell you this. For many agencies that are US based, especially agencies that are specializing in a niche similar to EGAMI Group, what will happen is we will start our business, we'll grow our business to a certain size, and then there are major holding companies here, global holding companies that, for whatever reason, they actually need to acquire a capability to strengthen their overall portfolio. So from an exit strategy standpoint, I think the traditional route for us would be to continue to grow year over year, and at some point potentially entertain selling to one of the major holding companies. And to be honest with you, not just the holding company, you have media companies now that are buying their own agencies to kind of have agencies housed within. You even have consulting firms that are buying agencies because they need that expertise. So I wouldn't just say we're pigeonholed just as the four major holding companies of advertising companies, but there are different types of companies that are acquiring agencies. So for us, I think that would be the path that we would consider over maybe a 5-year period, 3 to 5 years of looking at an exit. And we have advisors that we work with that are really geared around preparing us for the exit today, where you start to think about your exit today. And there's certain things that we're doing, looking at how we position our books, looking at our margins, looking at almost thinking about all the things that a buyer would be looking for, thinking about that now and planning things now. I will say this, a few years back, we started to work with an advisory company that was supporting us to scale the business. And more so than ever before, we kind of had our eye on the exit plan and we had our eye on scale, scale, scale. And now that we're starting 2020, I actually just gave a speech to my staff where I said, you know what? Let's slow this thing down and let's get back to our core. I don't want to so focus on more, scale, 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 that the very thing that built us is somehow being watered down. Let's not lose the magic in this journey to scale, become bigger, better, faster. So the three words that I'm saying to my company this year is rebuild, reset, and recalibrate. And that's all around this initiative to make sure that we're slowing down and we're paying attention to the core.
Yeah, it's so important, Teneshia. Honestly, we can get so caught up in that desire to scale. You know, everybody wants to scale and get more, and it does get lost, doesn't it? The customers start to feel it. The clients can feel it on the outside, can't they? Wonderful. Okay, so let's take, you just mentioned one of my favorite words, magic. Let's take that magic wand and go back 12 years, go back 13 years, to wherever, sort of back in those early days. And I know we don't like to live with regret, and, you know, this question doesn't work for everybody, but is there something you would have done differently?
Something that I would have done differently. I'm thinking here so your audience knows that I'm really, really thinking. You know what? I would have to say, even our biggest mistakes helped us, like it really did propel us forward. That I honestly, I can't say that there's something in my mind that I can say, oh, you know what? One thing just popped in my mind. Yes. Good. Even though this was a huge lesson learned that I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think becoming very keenly aware of, as the founder, what you're good at and what you're not good at, and starting to determine what you're not good at and find individuals and team members that are excellent at your weak spots and start to put them on the boat, right? Quicker. I was extremely good at creativity. I was extremely good with coming up with ideas. Very much so a visionary. However, what I was not good at is accounting, numbers, understanding the importance of deal structure in terms of payment terms, cash flow. And so I do believe that knowing what I wasn't good at and then hiring accordingly faster and earlier would have saved us a great deal of pain, maybe around year 4 or 5. Yeah. So that's one thing so to sum it up, to answer it, what I would do differently is know what I know and know what I don't know. And the things that I don't know, go find experts who know very quickly and partner with them, or find a way to put them on your employment bandwagon.
I love that. And you're probably not our first guest to say that, Teneshia. I have to say that it is, you know, and, you know, like I said, that question doesn't really work for everyone. But you said something really wonderful there that I love. You said our biggest mistakes propelled us forward. So there's going to be tough times. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be challenges. What sort of things make it tough? And then how do you get over it? How do you move on when things don't go the way you think they're going to? Are you able to give us an example?
Yes. And I'm actually, so Ingrid, as you know, I just recently wrote a new book entitled The Big Stretch, 90 Days to Expand Your Dreams, Crush Your Goals, and Create Your Own Success. And there's a section in this book, it's broken out into the 4 phases of dreaming. Phase one is all about encouraging the reader to dream. So for your listeners that are starting a business, I would encourage them to really be within a dreaming mindset, allowing yourself time to imagine. That's where the great ideas come that kind of fuel great businesses. The second phase is design, and that's making sure you design an infrastructure to support the building of the business. Who are you servicing? What makes what you're doing unique? What makes what you're doing viable? A third thing, the third phase is dare. And that is making sure that you're courageous enough to take risks, whether those be calculated risks or not, but you're going to have to dare outside of your comfort zone. And then the last phase is do. And do is really centered around making sure that you're prepared to do your dream for the long term. Inside of this chapter on chapter 11, the title of this chapter is called Dream Warriors. And I believe that dream warriors fight the giants that stand between them and their dreams. And for the small business owners that are listening, you will have lots of fights and you will have lots of obstacles, and being willing to stay the course in the face of obstacles can make or break whether you make it or not. Some of those obstacles, I'm going to tell you some that I've faced. One obstacle is the obstacle of rejection, hearing no. You may be pitching your business plan, and inside of that pitch, you're hearing no, no, no. Well, will you have the tough skin and tenacity enough to pivot around no's? I like to say you need to find an interpretation of no that works for you, an interpretation that will not have you just immediately abandon your dream. I interviewed a lot of great business owners in this book, and one is Jennifer Fleiss. She's the founder of Rent the Runway. And Jennifer talked about, the first time that she presented this idea that women would actually potentially rent couture clothing. She was presenting this idea to a room full of male investors, and they all told her this will never fly. But she was the audience. She knew that this was a viable idea. So she had to be tough enough to say, no matter how many no's I've heard, I'm going to keep going until I can figure out a way to present this idea in a way that the end users get it. So that's one fight. For me, one of my biggest obstacles, going back to knowing what I didn't know, right? That financial piece. As I started to grow, I took on larger clients. Well, these larger clients had payment terms that were longer and longer. One in particular had payment terms that were spread out to 120 business days, which meant that it could take me 4 to 6 months to get paid. Well, the type of contract that I was in required that I spent a lot in the upfront. Whether I was doing a celebrity endorsement deal, I was paying my team and staff, I was paying for events, I was paying for travel. And I realized the hard way, you just did a deal that you're not liquid enough to sustain. Yes, the money is there. Yes, the client is there, but your cash flow does not match the terms that you signed up. That was a big battle for me because I was deep into the contract terms before I even understood. Again, that goes back to learning on the job. I feel like entrepreneurs, we jump off the cliff and we build the plane on the way down. So yes, that takes guts and tenacity, but you really get a lot of scars along the way when you do it that way. And so that was a really, really big fight for me. Other things that you have to maybe fight is understanding how to be patient. You may have big ideas and big dreams for this business, and you may have big goals in terms of your revenue goals. Well, it may take you a couple years to get there. Are you going to stay the course in the beginning when you are starting out with small beginnings?
I think to
Another
that
thing,
point, sorry,
okay,
Tanisha,
yep.
I think to that point is we see successful businesses. So even somebody listening to you, it's taken you really since 2003, but you celebrate from 2007. We're talking 17 years to get to the success to have an office, on the corner of 35th and 7th, that you've got a team of, 12 to 15 employees. That didn't happen overnight. And that patience, we see Google's success, we see Facebook's success, we see Airbnb, the big ones that are enormously successful. They started the same as you, with a trickle, with that very first client. But a lot of people just don't have that patience, do they?
Yeah, you have to have the patience for the long term. So lots of things like that you're going to have to fight. How to remain competitive.
Yeah,
In an
totally.
ever-changing world where new technologies are coming in, new competitors are coming into your space. How do you remain relevant? How do you remain competitive? These are all battles that as a dream warrior, you must be willing to fight.
I love that. And I love the idea of fighting the giants. So tell us again the name of the book and where can people find it?
So the title of the book is The Big Stretch, 90 Days to Expand Your Dreams, Crush Your Goals, and Create Your Own Success. I poured my heart and soul into this book, not only sharing my stories and all of the key learnings that I've learned as an entrepreneur that's been on the journey for 17 plus years, but I also interviewed some amazing entrepreneurs and professionals in this book, from Magic Johnson, the CMO of Procter & Gamble, Mark Pritchard, Jennifer Fleiss, the founder of Rent the Runway, even the founder of the Me Too movement. I have amazing stories of dreamers that are featured in here so that the reader can actually learn from others. The idea was to give a dreamer's blueprint of how do you kickstart your next big dream, your next big idea. It's designed for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and even professionals.
Yeah.
And
that
so
sounds
this book,
it sounds just like everyone on our audience. So yeah, I think
yay!
everybody. So where can they get this book?
So the book is available everywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Target, Walmart. Those are some, just to name a few.
Yeah.
If you go to www.thebigstretchbook.com, many of the retailers that hold the book, you can click right from there to the book link. But of course, everybody has Amazon. So
everybody
Amazon,
has Amazon,
Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. So everywhere books are sold.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody's going to want to get a copy. Can't wait to get mine. So tell us, Tanisha, coaches, mentors, have you been part of any kind of mentoring, coaching, and what role has that played for you?
Absolutely. I've kind of been very fortunate that along the way, I've identified mentors and coaches. So when I first started EGAMI Group as an agency, luckily for me, the firm, I did a strategic partnership with a Publicis-owned firm, MSL Group. And this was the third largest communications firm in the world. Well, inside of that partnership, we provided to that firm multicultural diversity marketing capability. But what that firm was providing to us is basically a learning ground on, like, what is the business of agency? I knew how to reach diverse audiences, but I didn't necessarily know or understand how to run an agency. So for about 3 to 5 years under that initial partnership, many of the executives that ran that agency, whether it was the global president or senior vice president, those individuals, just from me watching their blueprint, they were serving as mentors. So it wasn't necessarily this traditional mentor relationship, like, come take me out to lunch and teach me everything that you know. It was more of me watching them and learning from the proximity that I had to that organization. So that was a huge mentor relationship.
You know, Tanisha, just takes us right back in a cycle to your volunteering, because you're the sort of person, it sounds like, that you observe what's going on around you. You take in information as you see it. So you went to the volunteering and you learned and you understood what was going on in those businesses, and you made an impression. In that relationship you're just talking about there, the partnership with the business, you're observing how these people behave in business and you're emulating that and using that as mentoring. That's a very strong characteristic that you have, that I haven't heard from, and I'm going to say any of my guests, but perhaps maybe one or two. But it's certainly it's a way of improving your, that sounds so tacky, sort of, it's a way of growing and developing your own skills without actually engaging in a formal process of it. Is like being very self-aware of what you need and then going out and finding and emulating. I love that. I just love what you said there. So as we come to a close, 3 characteristics that you have. And, we've been speaking together for a while and the audience have been listening. And so you've alluded to a lot of who you are and how you operate. What are the 3 key characteristics that make you successful in business?
Me, the individual, or my company, or both?
You,
okay.
The individual, because it's what you need to be. Yeah, you.
So one characteristic I would say is I work, live, and lead on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, purpose is truly sort of the compass guider that I allow to lead me in work and life. And so making sure that I understand who I am, what do I uniquely bring to the table, and in what ways can I offer those gifts and talents to the world by way of service. That's what I call just being purpose driven or purpose inspired. So that's a leading characteristic that Ingrid, from the moment that I decided to leave my corporate cushy job of IBM Global Services, I started to walk on a path of following purpose. Yeah. And that's a characteristic that still describes me to this day. Yeah. Something else that I would say, and I'll say this because people tell me, it's not because of what I said. People just have always said this. Usually if you've been in my presence at some point, that person will say, "You're tenacious, Teneshia." And multiple people have said that without even knowing each other. And so tenacity and being tenacious and bold to go after what it is that I want is a characteristic that, again, so many people have told me that without even knowing each other. So I fully embrace tenacious T.
Yep, tenacious T, I love that.
And then I would like to also say something that's important to me. I'm going to do 2 more, even though you said 3. Is it's a part of our core values. Now, it's being humbly confident. And inside of humbly confident, I think that means you're always grounded, you're humble, and you know that your role is to serve. And so going back to, that very beginning of where I started to volunteer, there's something in that approach of really looking to serve and give first, where the giving comes back. And I approach my business relationships in what's in it for them versus what's in it for me. Yeah. And that humbly confident service mindset is definitely key. And then the last one would be relationship focus. Yeah. I am extremely big on relationships. I believe all relationships matter. Whether you are a bellman, a waitress, a cleaner in this building, or a CEO, I will treat you with the same respect. Your role matters, your contribution in the world matters. And that's very important for me.
Yeah, I resonate with that last one so much. I think every role is as important as any other. It may not be remunerated the same, they may not wear the same uniform, they may not come to work in the same way, but every role matters and every person matters. Yeah, I love that. Teneshia, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. Is there anything else as we wrap up? We'll put all the connections and show notes and then social media links in the show notes and your book, and we'll get a copy. If you can send me also like a screenshot or your promo for the book, we'll put that in the show notes as well. Anything else to add as we bring this to a close?
I mean, Ingrid, you did an amazing job with your questions. I feel really good about it. I think to sum it up, just one of my works that I'm most passionate about right now is the book. Something that's very special about The Big Stretch is I wrote it in a way where the reader has no choice but to get in action. It's broken down into a 90-day, 12-week program. Yeah. So each week you will hear stories of other dreamers. You will get business sort of practices and theories, but you also have business exercises where the reader gets a chance to apply whatever the principle is that's been taught in that week on their particular business or dream. So Fantastic. It's really an action-oriented book where I'm holding your hand every step of the way to get traction and to get results. And so I love that. That's the piece that I'm really excited. And something else, a bonus piece of content that is available at no charge is on my book's website, thebigstretchbook.com. There's something I created called a Dreamer's Profile Assessment. And you can take this assessment and learn what type of dreamer you are. So after interviewing thousands of dreamers, I realized that dreaming is not a one size fits all. And there's 5 different types that I identify, from a make it happen dreamer to a CEO dreamer to an activist dreamer. You can find out more about the description of those dreamers, but you can take an assessment and then it will actually tell you which dreamer type you identify with and the implications that may mean for you in your career or your career path that you're choosing. And that piece of content is available at no cost. So you can just go to the website and take it. And it's thebigstretchbook.com. Thebigstretchbook.com.
And I love what you say there about the action, because one of the things I always say at the end of the podcast is ideas are fabulous, and we get ideas from podcasts and conversations like this. But what action are you going to take? Even one small step, one small action, because ideas are great, but that's without action, that's all they are. They're dreams or they're ideas. So thank you so much for that. Teneshia, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. And Ingrid, if you're ever in New York City, come see me.
I'm going to be in New York City. I am going to be in New York City in August. I'm speaking at a conference in August, so I shall definitely be coming to see you in August.
Tell Shelby, because I think I got booked through Shelby. Yes. Give her all your information to give to me, and I'll give all my information to give to you. And come see me when you're here.
I will. I definitely will. And it's been so wonderful to listen to those horn tooting sounds, and it's such a New York sound. It's the only city in the world that it sounds like that.
It's the norm. And I'll tell you, when we got our office, we used to be located at Chelsea on 25th and 7th. And it was on a block that was a little bit more residential. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we thought, oh my goodness, we're going to get an office. We're 1 block away from Penn Station, which means we can catch the train in and out. But what we didn't think about is we're like in the heart of everything. And the horns are now the norm inside of our conference calls. So sorry about that. We didn't think about that when we got the place.
I think for everybody listening, it's been gorgeous. It really has. I just love that whole area. We could talk for ages, couldn't we? All right, let's go. Goodbye. Thank you.
All right, bye. Thank you.
And you know, of course, I really am looking forward to meeting up with Teneshia when I'm in New York this year. Thank you so much for listening to another wonderful episode of So You Want to Start a Business podcast. What are your standout moments? This business has an extremely strong niche or niche, and I love what Teneshia said about volunteering to get an idea of what she was truly called to do. And then when she didn't really have a business, but she knew she had to get a business real fast. So it's fantastic, isn't it? I always say to clients, if you're thinking about going into an industry that you haven't been in previously, get some exposure, get some experience, try it out before you make that huge commitment. For those of you who know, you may remember me saying on a previous podcast that I thought I was going to be a massage therapist, but when it actually came to touching people, I didn't like it. So, if you need any help with how to set this up for yourself or any ideas about how to get some experience, just shoot me an email, ingrid@healthynumbers.com.au. I answer all my own emails, and I can help you with anything that you need in your business. Just ask. Look out for Teneshia's book. The links are in the show notes. And for everyone listening, whether this is your first episode or you've been with us for some time, I truly believe whatever you are dreaming about can become real. These podcasts are designed to inspire, educate, and inform about what it takes to create and start and grow a business of your own. We are here to tell terrific business stories, and I trust that you found today's story inspiring. If you especially enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share with a friend or a colleague, somebody you know thinking about a business. Make it easy to have all the latest episodes by subscribing to the podcast. As Teneshia says, there are 4 Ds to her dreaming formula, and the 4th one is do, D-O, do. Because, as we always say, ideas without action, well, that's what they are, aren't they? Ideas. So what action are you inspired to take today? Till the next time, thanks for listening.